Welcome to Lymphatic Insight, your go-to podcast for unlocking the secrets of optimal health through the lens of the lymphatic system. Kindly sponsored by Flowpresso and Flow at Home products. Each episode features enlightening conversations with leading experts as we dive deep into the vital role of the lymphatic system. Tune in and discover how enhancing your lymphatic system can elevate your entire well-being. Today is episode 1 with Kelly Kennedy. Kelly Kennedy, commonly referred to as the Lymph Queen, is the mind behind the transformative energy flow formula and flow technique. With 19 years of clinical experience at the True Wellness Centre, she's dedicated to helping individuals pinpoint their blockages to healing and break free from hopelessness and health stagnation. Through her expertise in reigniting boundless energy, revitalizing fascia, enhancing lymphatic flow, optimizing oxygen intake, and improving internal and external water quality, Kelly empowers you to unlock your body's innate healing potential. Find her sharing valuable insights and wellness tips on her podcast, Energy Flow with Kelly Kennedy, and her Instagram, True Wellness Global, or visit their website at www.thetruewellnesscentre.com. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Lymphatic Insights. I'm very excited. This is my very first podcast, and the one and only Kelly Kennedy, who has been a friend for close to 20 years now. We have walked the lymphatic pathway side by side, in and out, weaving in through life. And we've learned so much along the way, and I'm in incredible gratitude that you're here today. Thank you.
Oh, as you know, Des, it's always my pleasure. And insight is the thing that we like to talk about the most. So I'm happy to oblige.
Thank you. So we're going to deep dive in. So we're going to sort of learn about Kelly and the amazing work she does with her flow, which she'll explain more about. But let's do this random fact that I've asked of you. What is your random fact?
So I really had to think about it. I was like, what is my random fact? I think people know so much about me that maybe they don't know. Now I forgot what I said. That's really funny. I don't know
about your earrings.
Oh, that I'm naked. Yeah. Because I was like, what is the one thing? And I really can't leave home without my earrings. I feel naked. I could be naked, but without my earrings, I really am naked. Like I could be naked and be more comfortable than fully clothed without earrings, as funny as that is. And, you know, I think part of it is because I couldn't get them pierced since I was 13. And the day I turned 13, I went and got them because it was something I really wanted. I couldn't have. And then later in my life, I learned that this is in every tribe, you know, everybody has their ears pierced in every tribe worldwide. And I learned that this is the pineal gland. And that a lot of people consider, I'm sure you know much more about that, that it's opening that pineal area, the third eye. And I think that's kind of funny for my life, that's kind of what I needed was some holes poked in to get rid of the valve rather. So yeah, I think that was very appropriate for the thing that most people don't know about.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's always nice to get to know someone other than just their background. I mean, as phenomenal as it is, it's kind of nice to get that relationship connected. So I want to start out with some questions because, you know, I've been in the lymphatic industry for so long, and it's so important for me we start to uncover and really go into some of the important nuances that so many people are starting to wake up and see. I mean, the last 4 years, I know you and I both talked about, we've seen more on lymphatics than we've seen in 20 years. We've got lots more people doing everything on Instagram, but there's also a lot of misconceptions out there as well. So I think I'll just start with, what are your key insights on the value the lymphatic system has on the body?
It's still so underrated. You know, the insight is that while people still talk about it, if they're not actually doing the work themselves and hands-on approach, honestly, on their own bodies, I mean, in addition to in clinic, then they're not seeing the magnificent results that lymph can give them. And they're still caught up in the details, which the details are awesome, right? I love the physiology of it all. I love knowing the end result of what my liver enzymes and my gut microbiome is doing. And the reality is that it all comes from the cleanliness or lack thereof of the filter of the lymphatics, of the space, if you will, between the cells. And I mean, we have 3 times more lymph than we do blood, and we have so much terrain of lymphatics and even the trained therapists that speak of lymphatics, I still question how much of percentage wise of their focus is on the lymphatics. You know, when I was forced, if you will, to find a niche, and it was like, what's your niche? You know, we joked about this before we recorded. It was like, the people are our niche, the ones that are sick, which is pretty much everybody I've met for many years, whether they're conscious of it or not. When we put them on the heart rate variability, or we do a live blood analysis and we look at the subtle energy of the body, we see all these dissonances, all these misalignments. And when we start working the lymphatics, it's the thing that makes the most significant change in all these quantitative assessments. And whether it was the manual lymph node release that you taught me all those years ago, it was the old technology that we used to use that you, thank God, found a better solution for in the Flow Prezo, whether it was the Flow Prezo, or it was then combining that with the Flow Vibe, the Flow Prezo, the Sonosol, and all the other tech that we've learned that, or God bless you, you've created to allow us to force that body into a parasympathetic state that then allows the lymph to move. Because like, the question always begs itself, right? With you and I, is it the parasympathetics that makes them move their lymph, or is that moving their lymph makes them go in the parasympathetic? I think we've come to the terms that it's both are true. And this, everybody's doing all the right things, but they're not being first. They're not putting the body in the gear that allows them to shift. They're not opening the drainage before they start the detox. And it's just the biggest insight I have is lymph in the beginning, lymph in the middle, and lymph at the end. Lymph, 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 lymph. And then when you're done, do a little bit more lymph. And when you're done with that, do a little bit more lymph. Then add a little fascia and then go back to lymph. And you won't have to worry about the function of the organs because the innate wisdom within is going to take care of that. But it can't drain its filters in the environment in which we've put it in, which is sedentary and overwhelmingly toxic. And so we've got to facilitate it's the lymphatic. And I'm so grateful for you on many levels, and to really bring in not only the Flow Prezo, but the lymph node, I think is really such a legacy, the lymph node release, because it's such, you know, people think about the surface lymph, they think about, oh, lymphedema, but it's so much deeper. The lymph problem is not, you don't have to have lymphedema to have a lymph problem. Most 99.9% of people I've met on the planet, which is well over 4 million at this point in my 50th year, have lymphatic stagnancy. And they don't understand it because they think of it as symptoms. They think of it as headaches, or I have menstrual issues, or I have digestive issues, or I have rashes, or I have autoimmune, they call it autoimmune disorder, or whatever it is. And I sit there and go, you have a lymph problem. You have lymph stagnancy. And if we just allow your lymph to move, watch what happens. And it's magical to watch the lymph. When you move the lymph, watch the body, the innate wisdom compensate for now that the valve is open and the pressure is relieved, to watch the body just magically heal as we can relieve the pressure.
Thank you. I do want to just touch a little bit on HRV and parasympathetic, because maybe not all our listeners understand. So you've been working with HRV for quite some time, and you use it, I'm correct, as a means to identify how the body is switching between sympathetic and parasympathetic, and then the interrelationship to lymphatics. Do you mind discussing that a bit more and just highlighting why we need to be in parasympathetic?
You know, that's definitely a question I don't get asked enough, because most people don't know enough about the lymph and the cardiovascular system to ask such a poignant question. So thank you, Des. The lymph dumps into the cardiovascular system, right? We know this if you've listened to Desiree for more than 3 minutes. You know that this is the most important part of the lymph, above your clavicle, where your termi, where the lymph ends, and it dumps into cardiovascular. Well, throughout the years of doing heart rate variability, and I've used different softwares, but the primary one I used was Nerve Express, which was created by Dr. Alex Riftein, who's a cardiologist from Russia that was training Navy SEALs to find their health, not disease, but their health. And I had clients, and one of the markers you're looking at is the tension index, the actual tone of the heart. And then you're also looking at the chronotrophic and vascular recovery. So the dip of the heart that can pump the blood and bring it back up. And that's done at the transition point when you're doing this test when the person stands up. So you have a heart rate monitor on, you're laying down, at a certain point you stand up, and then that's what it's testing, the stress of standing up. And can the body compensate? And what we have found is that when you stand up, the body should have a nice dip in the cardiovascular region. And yet I had found that dip was absent, even in the athletes, even in the Ironman type athletes. And then when I did one lymph node release, big changes happened in the cardiovascular system. And I went, oh. So as I was reading the heart rate variabilities, maybe 18 years ago now, I started to go, oh, I can look at that chronotrophic dip and lend to how thick that lymphatic fluid is, which it should be like water, not like jelly. And if it's like jelly, then that's going to put more pressure on the actual tone of the muscle, which is going to look like tension to the physical heart. And it's going to not allow this vascular recovery and this chronotrophic dip, because it's like taking water through a hose goes well. Jelly through a hose, not so well. And so as we open up these lymph nodes, we're able to move that jelly out. And now all of a sudden, this person has this rehab in one session of their cardiovascular system. Nothing. They didn't do anything cardiovascularly different. They just changed the fluid that's circulating throughout their bodies, that's then dumping into the cardiovascular system, that allows us to then, through our emunctory organs, pee out, poop out, sweat out, and Kelly Kennedy contends bleed out our toxicants. And my point of contention is we got to learn how to do that faster than they're throwing them at us, which is why we both, I think, focus on the lymph, because you were dealing with a lot of cancer patients and I was dealing with chronically ill clients. And how can you not focus on the lymph when you're dealing with that? Because you want to help them turn their case around, then you got to get those toxins out faster than they're putting them in the body to allow the body to truly recover, because the body will recover. We're just facilitators.
That's an incredibly good point. And thank you for that overview, because that leads back to that initial comment that you made about, is it the parasympathetic that stimulates the lymphatics, or is it the lymphatics that stimulates the parasympathetic? And one of the things that we know, and most people are learning, is that, when you're in that restful state and that recover and digest and everything, that's when we do drain more efficiently. But we've also got the lymphatics, right, of the brain. And when we sleep well at night, obviously that's pivotal to how we drain the brain. So we can understand now how vital it is that people are coming out of that fight, flight and getting in and starting to regulate again. We saw it a lot in the research we did with New Zealand Police. Most of them in Nerve Express were living in that sympathetic quadrant, lying down as well as standing up. They were better standing up than they were lying down, and some were going into the chronic state. So we, even in a, like you say, in sports people or in first responders, they are suffering just as much. And as you said, environmentally, they're dealing with more going in than what's coming out. So what do you think is the biggest misconception about the lymphatics? Because there's a lot of stuff that goes around out there that people are being influenced by, but what do you think the main one is for you?
One is that this is doing your lymph. It's a good start. It was a gift you gave to the world when COVID hit to release your top 10 points that we've all made our own, but really it is Desiree's legacy that brought that to the world. And I'm noticing a lot of people that are just teaching that and think that's the extent of the lymph. And I often will say after a person's on my table, and I'm sure you would feel the same after they're on your table, after an hour of doing all the things that we do to help get them in that deep layer of parasympathetic and deeply allow the body to release, I often will make a joke and go, and that's lymphatic. Joe Dispenza always goes, and that's energy, so I go, and that's lymphatic flow. And so it's like I'm glad that they're talking about it, but it's also been simplified in its approach, that it's just pumping your lymph nodes, that it's not this multi-layered approach to looking at your fascia, your lymph node, your lymph fluid, the superficial lymph, the sequence of which it's done, the frequency of which it's done. It's not once and done. Oh, I did that lymph movement. That's done now. I moved my lymph. I went to that one session. It's so much, I don't want to say it's complex, but it's more involved, if you will, for people. So I think the misconception is that it's, after being underrated, it's oversimplified.
Yeah. Agree.
And it's also like, oh, I took a lymph class, so I know what's going on. Listen, I took a lot of lymph classes before I met this lady. And I would say that between my knowledge and her knowledge, we have melded them. And we have a very different approach than we did 10 years ago. And I would have put either one of our approaches up 10 years ago to anybody's approach almost in the world, no matter what you're up against. Because when you look at the body from this framework, like Dr. Drobot, like so many of us, like Dr. Christine Schaffner, who I'm sure you're going to have on here as well, when you come from the framework of looking at the terrain, you're coming from the lowest common denominator. And that is what's missing in so much medicine, is that lowest common denominator. And I want to win. You know that, Des. I like to win. So I want to work at the on the approach that's going to give me the best bang for my buck. And when I work the lymphatics, as you and I've talked about, it's about drainage, yes. And it's about letting go. And it's about stepping in, as you and I both talked about too. It's about stepping into who we really are. And it's about finding the resistances and being okay with them and moving through them. And it's energetic and it's emotional and it's mental and it's physical and it's spiritual, all of those things. You know, I'm brought so much to our good friend, Dr. Kiratola's wife, Georgia, who said one of the best sentences I've ever heard in my life. And I will take it to my grave, probably is one of the best sentences I ever heard. And I think you were on the boat when she said it. You'll never know who a person is to you unless you've been to the mattresses with them. Now, you know, the Godfather is heavy in their family, but you don't know somebody till you've been through it with them. And it's like your body's the same way. That lymphatics is where your body's storing all of the history, the pathogens, the toxicants, the emotional components are in that lymphatics. And until you've dived in there and you've started to excavate that out, like an architect, gently and slowly, so as not to disrupt too much too fast, you see the beautiful source of who you really are underneath all of the layers. And then you can let that shine through and let that step into that, because you have the space now. You don't have the mom talking to you and the teacher telling you this and, you know, society pushing you down for that reason. You get to be you because you let go of the filters that don't serve you anymore, which is what lymph is about, allowing us to step into who we really are.
So I think this is the perfect lead into talking about how all of this knowledge has influenced your clinical practice, because you have this technique flow, FLOWE. And I think this is a great opportunity to take all that knowledge that you've gained over this last almost 20 years, and you've incorporated it in for a number of years now in your clinical practice in a particular way to address, one being also that real good understanding around the interference field of scars as well. So can you lead us in and give everyone a bit of an insight into flow and how that is looking more at that holistic approach?
So it's so funny because as you're saying flow with an E, I was like, oh gosh, we didn't tell her the change. I mean, that's how much stuff changed at our office, because it went from flow with an E to energy flow, because E was getting left off at the back, but really it's all about energy. And energy flow, fascia, lymph, oxygen, water, to try to explain what we do, it's very comprehensive. And I was trying to explain it to somebody the other day, and he was great. He's an IT guy and he's a mogul, and he comes, and after I explain it for a few minutes, he goes, oh, so you're a plumber? I was like, yeah, an electrician and a contractor and an architect and the feng shui expert and the interior designer, depending on what tool you need. And so how do you explain what we do? Well, it's really energy, and it's the science of energy that we're held to. And because of the science of energy, the more I learn, the more I change, and have to incorporate it and interwind it into what we do. And so I'm always looking for the most efficient and effective way to do that, to help the person be and experience their own inner beauty, their own authority, their own self. And we always teach what we need to know. So I think Desiree could do an entire podcast about the pre-flow Kelly, the Kelly that just met Desiree and was a little hard and fast, to say the least. I still go just as deep, and I'm probably just as fast, but it's way more gentle. And part of that is because I had to learn the great lesson of how to receive and how to only give when the participant's willing. And when you have the golden ticket, like Willy Wonka and the golden ticket, and you know that it's unlimited golden tickets and you can give the golden ticket to anybody, I was tending to stuff the golden ticket down everybody's throat as soon as I met them. And what I've learned is that they can have the golden ticket. I'm happy to give it. All you have to do is ask for it, and I'm happy to pass it over because you're ready. But I'm no longer hitting you in the head with it. And so the scars are an interference field that allow us to not receive the golden ticket. Scars are a foci, a blockade, like a detour on a road that will stop you from getting to your end goal. Slow you down, sometimes stop you, sometimes detour you so bad that you lost track of where you were headed. But reality is that a lot of people now, just like lymph, are, thank goodness, talking about the dental piece, which is another blockade to the healing. However, we know scars are another block, and you don't have to sit in a dental chair for them. And all of us have at least one scar, the belly button. Most men by day 3 have another scar with a circumcision. And most women, by the time they've childbearing years, have a second scar themselves, either in a C-section or an episiotomy or a tear. And midline scars are the most important because it's your, the fascia is your energy capacitor. It's where the energy flows. It's where the information, which energy is information, flows through the collagen fibers through electrical signals of sound and light, known as the piezoelectric effect when we move. And that electrical signals, as they're moving, are going to go very well as long as we don't have a scar. If we have a scar, then those signals get stuck and clogged wherever that scar is. And then at inappropriate times to inappropriate organs, it'll send out signals, those electrical signals. And now the body doesn't work 100% right. It's like a computer with an operating system that just is overwhelmed. And so again, much like we talked about prior, that in order for people to get the best results for all the things they're doing, a lot of people call it biohacking. I would like to call it bio-loving, because you don't want to hack, take control over a system that doesn't want to have control taken over it. But love your body, love the operating system known as your innate wisdom, your autonomic nervous system, your love, which is what heals. And quantitatively, you can assess it through your heart rate variability. And it's about getting in that parasympathetic mode, that digest, that rest, that recovery, that be present and still moment, not fight, flight, sympathetic. Not that that's a bad thing either, right? It's great when my kid's putting his finger in a light socket to get that sympathetic engaged and to stop him from doing such a dumb thing. And then to teach him to not do such dumb things so that I can rest and recover and relax as he's 11, 12, 15, that he's not going to stick his light in a finger in a light socket, right? But the scar is like, I've told him that and told him that and told him that, but he's not getting the message. And a scar is like blindfolds and earfolds that don't allow your body to get the message that, hey, you got to stop doing that. So even though I'm doing all the right things, it's not sending the signal. And so when we send the signal, we have to do much less. Just have to whisper that. And when we whisper, the body gets the message, and now it can circulate that information everywhere it needs to go because there's no interruption in that energy. So scars literally block the nervous system from working properly. And as we learn in bioregulatory medicine, anything can cause anything. It's one of my favorite lessons. Anything can cause anything, and it's never one thing that causes one thing. It's always multi-causational. So there's lots of things. However, when, again, lowest common denominator, if you have a scar influencing the body, that can influence anything in the body and everything in the body. When you address the scar, it can also allow communication in so many places. I've we've treated scars for years, both non-invasively and invasively. When we had a medical doctor, we did it invasively and now non-invasively. And I get reports all the time from everywhere, from best night of my sleep to, oh my gosh, I was able to hold my pull-up bar for an extra minute. Honest to God, that was a real story. To personally me, I slept on my back for the first time in 13 years when I had my scar injected. And I never got another ovarian cyst burst. And I had 30 of them burst in 10 years after I had my scar treated. So, and the thing with scars, much like lymph, you got to keep treating the scars. Just like lymph, you got to keep, until we figure out how to not live in a toxic world, we got to continue to treat our lymph more than twice a day. You brush your teeth twice a day, you should pump your lymph twice a day if everything's going well. How many of you have everything going well? Then perhaps you should do it more frequently to increase your frequency.
Yeah,
make
that's
sure
a good.
scars are treated, because that will interrupt the frequency. Sorry to interrupt, but see, I interrupted her like a scar. Interrupt that information, and now we don't know what she was going to say. And that's what the scar does. It stops the information, and then you don't know what it was going to do. So when you treat the scars, watch the magic unfold, pump your lymph, and fire your practitioners. Or be a better practitioner by teaching this to your client base and get way better results as a practitioner because you're treating scars, particularly if you have the Flow Prezo. And you're not treating scars, you're not going to get the greatest benefit from the Flow Prezo or the Flow Vibe if you have scars. And this little thing can treat scars too, not just your lymph. I mean, therapize. Because I'm not a doctor, so I can't treat, but I can therapize.
So then that kind of leads us into what would you recommend for a daily routine and what advice? Because we've talked about, in a clinic, you've got a series of different tools that you can work on, but what would you recommend someone at home or even practitioners to start with on themselves? Because self-care is just as important for us as a practitioner, right? Because how can we deliver if we don't even implement it into our own lives, like me, who was doing my Flow Vibe this morning, so I don't look so puffy. So, what would you recommend? Because you do have some masterclasses and stuff like that people can access.
I thank you for that question. Your lymph node release is so beautiful, and I teach it for free on my website. And as we both know, those who weren't in class, let me let you in on a little secret. There was a lot of schooling of Kelly in these classes of not that hard, nope, too hard, nope, not too soft. Like, it was hard for me as a body worker to get the right feel of the lymph node. So again, Des is a solution-oriented person. She created the Flow Vibe. So one of my first questions when I train people on Flow Prezo or I train them with Flow Vibe is, are you doing it yourself? So I agree with you 100,000,000%. You got to do this on you before you do this with clients. And a lot of us, unless we're body workers and trained to do lymph, it's very challenging to get the right pressure that's going to give you the best effect to open up your flow. So doing the Flow Vibe twice a day, hold. It's not, I know it looks like a massager, but it's not. So just hold it for 5 seconds and then move it for 5 seconds. And do it in the right order, in the right sequence. And both of us have this fully laid out on our website and with the QRC code, and you can learn how to drain the face. Unless the left termini is draining, your face isn't going to drain anyway. So you better start at the lower part of the body, which is why I created the master class, because I could say things she can't say, essentially. And so in my master class, I was like, okay, so now we know how to drain the face and look pretty longevity-wise. That's great, but now let's drain our body. Because everybody wants the head to drain and the neck to drain for beauty and function-wise, but none of it will drain unless the body drains. That's why 75% of the lymph drains on the left termini. So I teach how to drain the breast, the liver, the spleen, and the inguinals. So I say pump your lymph 2 times a day. Do the quick sequence with a Flow Vibe if everything's going well. If you are going through something, pump it 4 times a day. Then 1 time a week, treat your scars with a Flow Vibe, going cross-section, which I also teach in my masterclass. And then do the full body sequence, not just the top 10 points, but where you're draining the gut, the liver, the spleen, the breast, as well as the legs. And then see a practitioner. So do self-care at home for a couple weeks, then go seek out somebody that's doing a flow presso and make sure to drain your lymphatics before you get on the flow presso. Do your flow vibing. Or if they're also a practitioner that does her lymph node release, get a 30-minute opening before you get on the flow presso or afterward, and you'll get even more of a benefit from it. But for self-care, for me, it's before any of that, you got to do this. Be present first, and then go and address your body and feel your lymph nodes and feel your body and pump it with your breath. It's not just going, okay, I'm going to pump my lymph. It's slower. How much has the world turned, Desiree? I'm on your podcast teaching people to go slower and softer and more gentle. That's a true healing on many levels.
It is. It's significant for those who know Kelly and I.
Very significant. And that's the beauty of being able to face ourselves and meet each other at our hearts and know that our brains always will screw it up because they're limited, but our hearts are unlimited, as are we in our healing capacity. And when you can meet somebody and know somebody's heart, you can always work through no matter what, if you're willing to feel whatever it is that's holding you back from experiencing really heaven on earth. And you're not going to get that without lymphatic flow.
And you covered briefly on the breath. Let's just dive into that just a little bit more, because, you know, my experience working with predominantly breast cancer, it always felt like women were holding, or some men were holding their breath. Like it was kind of stuck in that parasternal area, so the sternum area. And we know breath has a number of advantages. Do you want to talk about that a bit more? So from a lymphatic point of view, but also from parasympathetic and everything else.
So many things. I remember years ago in one of your first classes teaching us about the cisterna chyli, which isn't a lymph node. It's an empty sac that sits mid-abdomen above the belly button, and it's right below the diaphragm. And throughout the years, it's just so fascinating to me that the diaphragmatic breath, because a lot of people think of belly breath and they think of pushing the belly button out, but it's really about your diaphragm, more like yoga or singing breath, where you're expanding your lungs and expanding your rib cage and expanding your breath so that you're more air than you are matter. And it's so fascinating to me that when we open up our diaphragm, when we relax our breath, when we can be present to our breath, our heart rate variability improves and increases, and it increases our vitality and our resiliency. And we should have known that from the get-go, because the difference of us living and dying is one thing: breath. And we know you can't live for a minute without your lymph moving, but you can live days without water, weeks without food, but 3 to 5 minutes without breath. And when you are charting somebody's heart rate variability, it's looking at the spaces between the heartbeats is the breath. And it's in that space that we live. And if you're studying shamanic theory, or you're studying Buddhism or Christianity or Judaism, it's all about the breath. And it's about the fact that one thing we control is breath. And then on the last visit that I physically saw this beautiful goddess of lymph, known to all of you as Desiree De Spong, I was recovering from a broken elbow and a dislocated shoulder from falling on ice, which was instrumental in my healing, to teach me so many lessons about watching every step I take. But I also teach that every breath you take. So the last time I physically saw Des, I had fallen again, and I had dislocated 6 ribs. And I ran right to her. I didn't run to the emergency tac. I ran to the spiritual goddess and said, okay, I've fallen twice. I'm really done with falling. I'm in so much pain. And she put her hands on me and she said, what are you fearing? And I was holding my breath as she asked me the question, because I had been knowing that I need to make a move in my family, with my home, not with my family, but with my home. And so I don't wanna, but I know I need to. And for some reason, it was creating fear in my body, a fear of change, because I got to a pretty comfortable place and it was going to create some uncomfortableness. And I didn't want to be uncomfortable anymore. I've been uncomfortable for a long time in my life, and I finally was in a place of comfort, and there's no growth in comfort.
Very
and
true.
I was sending my breath essentially I was sending my attention and my energy outside of my body. And that was the other thing she asked me, where is your energy? Where's your focus? And I was like, not inside this body. Even though for 1 minute it wasn't, and then I fell. And that has been the icing on the cake for the lesson of my life, to go every step you take, every breath you take, be aware and conscious of it, because that's all you have is this moment. You don't know if you're getting the next moment. And it doesn't matter what happened in the previous moment. What you have is right now. And that's the power of now, the power of love, the power of the presence. Bringing in our breath fully and feeling all of it and allowing ourselves to expand through it and not being in a rush to get to the next breath, but just allowing ourselves to be present and to the depth of the breath. And within the last 3 weeks, a friend of mine, whose husband does a lot of this deep work, they both go to Joe Dispenza. He, within 4 days, went from, I got a headache behind my eyes, to some tingling in my lips, to some weird feeling in his feet, to put on a ventilator within 7 days, and was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, and he's recovering miraculously. But the point was, he laid there having a ventilator breathe for him. And once again, it placed the importance of our breath. And that he finally started to relax because he was so labored in his breathing that they gave him the ventilator to help him recover. And they were amazed, because normally people are on ventilators for 6 weeks when they're diagnosed with Guillain-Barré. He was on it for 6 days. And now he's in physical therapy rehab, and they're like, I don't know what's going on. It's so fast. Because he's allowing this body to heal, and he's not listening, nor is his wife, to what they're saying. He's feeling the energy in his body. He's allowing that to heal him, and he's allowing the unknown to heal him without this time that everybody's associated with. But a heart rate variability is looking at the dynamic aspects of our heart through space and time, and how well we're doing and playing that game. And so the breath becomes the game, if you will, that I'm playing of, can I control my breath regardless of the pressure that I'm up against? And can I stay in a deeply parasympathetic, relaxed state, even if the sky is falling, even if it hurts to take a breath because I have 6 ribs dislocated and an elbow that's rehabbing, and it hurts for every breath? Can we still stay relaxed? That was an extreme that I wouldn't recommend anybody go through. Please let my lesson be yours. But that was the beauty of that lesson. And, perhaps it happened for many reasons, one of which is for you all to hear it right now, so it could hit you where it needed to and go, whoa, yeah, without breath or on a ventilator, those are scary thoughts. So how's about we start paying attention to how well we're doing that or not doing that?
Yeah, I think the breath is always something that brings you back to the present, because it's amazing how many people have to think about breathing to do it effectively. It just doesn't always come naturally. So I think that's one of the advantages of teaching. We've seen it in New Zealand. We're doing a social enterprise where we've created this thing called Breathe You, which is basically a breath modulation tool that we give to the schools and the students, because there's so much anxiety and stress going on after the last 4 years, that you're just teaching them the out breath. And how does that, having something that's kinesthetic, that they can touch, it's somatic, but also that they can learn to do, because thinking to do it is not always as easy as the physical learning to do it. And not everyone can go out and do a course in breathwork, right? So it's been amazing to watch how it shifts these children to be able to be less stressed just through breath alone. So the power of the breath is phenomenal. I mean, we're seeking every I mean, you and I, as you say, the biohacking, whatever we either, but that we're looking for fix-its. But I do feel that some of these examples that you've made and the self-care is so pivotal to change, because I really like the idea that you actually said about going and doing some own lymphatic drainage, some self-care before you went to a practitioner, because we know how vital it is to get the pathways open. Otherwise, if we put you in something like flow preso or do an intense lymphatic drainage session, you start dumping because the body's going, woohoo, there's pathways open, let's get rid of this byproduct or the toxins that are in my system. And, but if that's all been backed up, I mean, you use that great analogy, is it the cars at the toll booth? It's not the car at the back you want to push, it's the one at the front. So it's opening up those pathways to get stuff to move. But breath to me is one of the easiest, the most simplest things, but it can also be as challenging if you don't know how to do it, that can create health. So now that we've talked about breath, lymphatics, scars, heart rate variability and that, if we then pie in the sky, dreams come true, let's make this our reality, how do you see lymphatic health, because we've just talked about mainstream, evolving in mainstream medicine over the next few years? Like, if we had the magic wand right now, what would you create?
I got my magic wand then. That's what.
Oh, wow.
I just got it last week. So my magic wand would be that we start to teach the little ones about the science of breath, known as yoga. Yoga, I don't know what it is like in New Zealand because I've yet to be there. I'm going to be real close though next week. I'll send you a note from Bali. Teaching isn't the right word. Immersing our children in the power of their breath. I know as a mom of an 11-year-old who had me as a mom, who also had half of my genetics and would be stimulated to anger pretty quickly, much like his mother. And watching the two of us interact those first 5 to 8 years of his life was challenging, to say the least, because I could see me and him, and I could see how much he wasn't breathing, which became a mirror for me to teach me how much I wasn't breathing. And as we know, when we do these deeply conscious breaths through our diaphragm, we're pumping that cisterna and we're pumping our termini because of the upper motion of the lungs on the upper side of it. And so it's great lymphatic flow, and it's about sighing out. That exhale, as you say, is so key. Let the inhale worry about itself. The exhale will always be there. And it was Dr. Drobot, actually, when I was interviewing him, that gave me that terminology of self-care over healthcare and the importance of breath, and making that our first line quote of defense for our little ones, to teach them the science of yoga, which is about breath. It's not about stretching. It's about being aware of your body, having an erect spine, so you have a proper antenna. And so you can get that oxygen to get to all the elements in the body. I mean, the word flow came up for me in my work because, fascia, lymph, oxygen, and water are all free. And when you learn how to work with them, the energy flows and you get true healthcare. And you may need a little skill set because we're not taught to control our breath. But as we can learn how to control our breath, I've watched not only our clients, but particularly my son, overcome his genetics of anger as his first response, and watch him take a breath and then be able to speak his truth. And I think a lot of the reason we hold our breath is because we don't feel safe in the environment to speak our truth for various reasons. And my magic wand is that everyone feels safe in their environment so they can speak their truth. Because when we feel safe, you start to heal, and we can breathe a little easier and a little more consciously and a little deeper, and allow our bodies to heal. If we don't feel safe, we're never going to heal because the body's not relaxed. And, you might live in a a very wealthy area and have what seems to everybody in the world everything you need, but there's something hugely missing. And you might be the poorest of the poorest and have everything you need, and from the outside it looks like you don't have anything, but it's really love. And it's what connects us all. It's what heals us. It's what we all come from. It's what we all are made from. It's what will win. And fear will never have what love has. And that safety element of helping our little ones feel safe and teaching them the breath so they can consciously feel safe and consciously breathe would change the trajectory of humanity, that Desiree and I could sit on the beach and enjoy our cabana boys feeding us grapes as our dream is, because the world has been changed and the world has been eyes wide open, knowing that their first line is breath, lymph, fascia. Get the oxygen traveling everywhere so the water can structure and hold that beautiful information of nature of which you are. And it can be way simpler and way easier. And you don't have to walk around with bags of supplements and all your tools and your tricks to biohack yourself into wellness, because you're just well and you stay well and you know what to do to be well and you know how to facilitate others to be well, because we're all the same and we all have this capacity. Some of us chose it as our livelihood. But no matter what position we find ourselves in life, we all have a choice with every breath we take and every step we take to choose love, to choose flow, to choose the unknown, perhaps, and to be aware maybe of our fears, be aware of our, and yet move through them, right? What does Nike say? Just do it. Just do it. And with a presence, just do it. That would be my wish for the world.
Well, that's beautiful. And I think a number of people would agree. Bring it back to simple and educate where we can and create a change through our children. I mean, you can change the world through the children, right?
That's the goal.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and your wisdom. And it's been incredibly wonderful to have you as my first host. Oh, no, I'm the host, aren't I? Get that right. The first. I'm so used to being on podcasts. It's such a different thing to actually be doing it for the first time. So thank you for being my guest and bringing the wisdom of what you're doing.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening to this and for sharing the wisdom of Desiree De Spong and the flow prezzo. There's a lot of flow in our lives. She's got the flow vibe. I got the flow formula. We've got a flow book, but it really is about flow. And Desiree, I truly honor you and am honored to be the first podcast attendee, if you will, because I really feel as the United States side of what you're doing, that you have brought such wisdom and beauty, and love that you're wearing green, because you have brought the heart and brought us all back to our hearts through your teachings and through your technologies, as you continue to do so as always. And I just am honored to be here and to have stewarded Flow Prezzo as I have in the role that I've had with Medela Health. It really is a privilege.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I receive it. And that'll carry me on to keep doing what I'm trying to do. Because sometimes we all need a little bit of receiving, and it's such a big part of what we do, right? Is we can give so much, but we also need to acknowledge the receiving. So I very much do receive that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for loving me the way you do.
Always will.